Well, we're here, another edition of the Corvo Riot Show, and I am joined today by Christian Rocco, MFPW superstar, 1/3 of the trio world-renowned. At what? I don't know.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Actually. What did I miss? What happened?
Well, that's the one thing you missed. On Saturday, I was kicked out of World Renowned and replaced with Chris Desmond.
Well, that's a downgrade.
That is a downgrade. I did not see it coming by any means.
Yeah, what the hell, man? Yeah, I guess I should have did a little research before this, but busy. Things are going on. Things are moving. So we sort of. But so much we could talk about. You've been a lifelong wrestling fan?
Absolutely. Ever since I was 8 years old.
So take me back, how you discovered wrestling and what hooked you.
Yeah, sure. When I started watching wrestling was right around that 2007, 2008 period. I still remember the first episode I watched of ECW. It was an episode where Ezekiel Jackson squashed some random jobber.
Okay. So we're talking the rebooted ECW.
Yes, the rebooted ECW. I wish I was able to see all the old ECW. But yeah, and something about it hooked me. I was interested enough to watch the SmackDown that Friday, and from there it just took off to the races. I saw my favorite wrestler, who's still my favorite wrestler to this day, Edge. I would eventually see Christian come back, and a lot of these other guys, Undertaker, all the big stars that would eventually hook me in, and I would grow such an affinity for this that I'd want to learn everything about it. And I consider myself a bit of a wrestling historian, so for me it was kind of discovering that older side of wrestling and just wanting to learn everything about it that really kept me coming back to it.
Okay, that's cool. You end up going to a lot of indie shows later on?
Yeah, when I was a kid, absolutely. Well, even when I was a kid, I still remember I was going to a lot of indie shows when I was 10, 11, 12, all the way up to COVID when everything shut down. But ever since then, I haven't really been able to. I'm very busy with the Monster Factory, very busy with my own career, and also going to college. But yeah, I was a huge fan of indie wrestling. I made sure I went to every show that was well within my reach. I would beg my parents, who I have to thank so much for supporting me on this wild journey. They would take me to PWS, which is now WrestlePro. I'd go to all the CZW shows, even when I was way too young to be there. Are we allowed to swear on here?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, great. So I have an amazing story about that. I still remember my first CZW show. The first match, my parents weren't really aware of what CZW was. They just knew they could take me to wrestling shows. And I was probably 12 or 13. And it's at the Skate Zone in Voorhees. The first match was Chris Dickinson and somebody else. And I remember being in the front row, and Dickinson was the heel at the time. And I just went, "Dickinson, you suck." Immediately stopped, looked at me, and goes, "I fucked your mom last night." And my mom just looks right at me and goes, "What did we take you to?"
You weren't supposed to find out about that.
Yeah, you weren't supposed to find out. There's a lot to explain there. But yeah, I would go there, House of Hardcore, and a bunch of other shows. I just made sure I saw everything wrestling. If there was wrestling around, I went to it.
Nice. I mean, honestly, we probably attended some of the same shows together then.
Oh, most certainly.
Now that I think about it. I mean, I only live a matter of minutes from the Skate Zone. But even before that, there was a time we would go to a lot of CZW shows, and I went to a lot of the shows at the arena in Philly.
Yeah.
Prior to the Skate Zone days.
Yes.
So, but yeah, so we've probably crossed paths prior to actually knowing each other.
Yeah, most certainly. I get that a lot at the factory because I've also been to like every Mania since 27. So at some point, I probably bumped into somebody or maybe sat in line with somebody, or my seats were probably in the same section. It's kind of nuts to think about that.
Yeah, yeah, it's wild.
Yeah,
You don't realize how small of a world it really is until
it really is.
yeah. So eventually, you decided to make the leap into wrestling,
Yes, sir.
which is totally different than just attending shows and being a fan. Like once you jump into it, it's a whole new world. What was that like getting into it, and where did you finally decide, like, you know what, I'm gonna give this a shot?
Yeah, I always wanted to, but I never pulled the trigger. And there was a period in college where, I was doing my thing, I was going to classes, I got involved, I was doing clubs, and there was this really strong longing, and it was really bothering me for a while. And I just felt really empty. And I just kept saying, like, eventually I'll get to wrestling, eventually I'll get to wrestling, eventually I'll get to wrestling. But not doing it just made me feel really unfulfilled. And there was a period where I'm like, you know what, it's now or never. I got to pull the trigger. So there was a deal at the Monster Factory, which I knew about ever since I was a kid. And I knew I wanted to train there or whatever Wrestle Pro school was, but I was more set on Monster Factory. That was my A school. And I signed up, and then almost like a week or a couple of weeks later, when I was just about to start, COVID hit. So I didn't start until that July, which gave me ample amount of time to get in crazy shape too. So like I lost a lot of weight during the beginning of COVID and then bulked right back up.
Right.
So once I came there, I felt like I was ready. I was in a great mindset. I took that time during COVID to kind of like really be introspective and think about things and want to like figure out how I wanted to go about this. So once I got there, it was right off to the races. I met some great people that just turned on me, that I hate now, that I absolutely despise. Brian Morris, Nick Petit, Westfield Kelly was a big part of that, coming back there every week. He was always somebody that was so supportive. Hafiz, and Chris Desmond, who is a terrible, awful human being now. But no, a lot of those guys, I'd be remiss if I miss anybody. I feel bad if I'm missing out on somebody.
Well, that's the thing.
Jason, there's just a great environment there.
Yeah,
Everyone's so great.
And a lot of the people you name, like right before COVID hit, like there was like this really, like this whole wave of new students who kind of came in the door and were either just about to get started or get started, and then the COVID thing came along and just fucked everything up for everybody.
No, most certainly. It was a weird time too. Like how are we going to go about wrestling? Because for a while it was just, all right, we'll do tape study or we'll wrestle the Invisible Man, and then slowly but surely we kind of progressed and gradually added more things back, whether it was just running or finally getting to do that first contact. It's so weird for guys like me that started. I felt like it took forever to even get started, because there were so many setbacks and just waiting for CDC reports. And you know how Dan is. Dan is always safety first and puts you first. So he didn't want anybody to get sick.
Yeah, he definitely wasn't playing with it at all. He
not at all.
Immediately kind of shut everything down and said, all right, we're going to play this by ear and wait till it's safe to get it. Because at one point there was a point like you guys weren't in, like people weren't in there at all for a little bit.
Yeah, for a while. Yeah. And not only that, like I have to give Dan a lot of credit to that too. I mean, I was very safe. My family was high risk. I took COVID very seriously. And they were afraid when I first started going to wrestling, but I didn't get COVID until this year. And I have to like credit Dan for prolonging that. Because he was always safety first, always making people get tested every week, even though it wasn't mandatory for anywhere else. You could go to another wrestling school, and they just let you right in the door and just have at it. It's the Wild West. But Dan has structure, and Dan puts those safety rules and regulations into place.
Yeah, it was a serious, it was a serious thing,
Nah, it's just a worldwide pandemic.
Yeah, no big deal.
Nothing.
It was all created by, well, I'm not going to get on my soapbox, but some people are just absolutely stupid.
I totally agree.
COVID proved it tenfold, but
yeah.
So you're also going to college. Well, what was that like? Now, because COVID hit, how did that affect the college end of things for you?
Yeah, no, it was difficult. It was really, to be honest, I think it made me a lot better. It gave me more structure to my life than I had prior to that. A lot of times I was just goofing off or doing nothing. And this time I actually had something to focus on and something to hone and get better. So for me, I always made sure my work was done beforehand, or, if I had to, I'd do as much as I can with wrestling, and then I'd come back at like 2 a.m. and finish all my work and be ready for my 8 a.m. class. You just make it work. You love something so much, you'll always make it work. I felt like it gave me a lot of structure. It made me wake up earlier so I could get my workouts in. It made me focus on my eating. I think it improved my life in every way. So I have to thank wrestling as a whole for that. And I have to thank, Dan and everybody else that kept pushing me, because I know me when I was younger, I could have never handled all that kind of responsibility.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a ton. And like, that's the thing. Like, I always kind of forget, because being 31 and being so detached from school and whatnot.
Yeah.
But a lot of the guys in there, like a lot of guys are in college.
Yeah, certainly.
Or, pursuing things of that nature, the plan B, so to speak. I wasn't smart enough to do that, but whatever. Like you said, though, like getting home 2 o'clock in the morning, doing work, like, is there ever a point where you're just like, what am I doing?
You want to think that, but no, like at the end of the day, it's just, this is all I've ever wanted to do. So that's always, and nothing's ever going to change that for me.
Right.
I'm one of those people who's very dead set on things. I'll get pissed and talk to myself like, oh, why am I doing this? Why? But I know in my heart of hearts that I'll never change. I know my true feelings about it, and like I've broken so many bones at this point, only 2 years in, and gotten concussions and broken noses, broken wrists, injury after injury after injury, and I still keep coming back. I'm like a cockroach. You just can't kill me.
Yeah, it's tough, and the injuries, like you said, you've had broken bones, concussions, and I can't imagine, like, with college and wrestling and then the injuries on top of it, like that's a ton, and it's a lot to deal with and take on.
There was a period though, towards the end of my senior year with the concussion too, and I was sore too. I felt like a 60-year-old man. I was walking around, I was clicking, I was sore. And I'm like, oh my God, it's just a pain to get to class. But you know what? You tough it out. To me, like that gets you nowhere if you just sit there complaining and just focusing on that. Like, it's just, all right, what's the next step? How do I adjust? How do I step back and look at the bigger picture? And I think that's the best mindset to have going into anything that's going to be difficult, especially something like wrestling.
Yeah, perspective is hugely important.
Yeah.
Because it takes such a toll on you, physically and mentally, and physically a lot.
Yeah.
I've told people before, like, I've had a couple of really bad car accidents, and I felt better in the morning after those than I did after, a night of training or wrestling a match or something,
Yeah, sure.
It's physically just grueling. Now, you said senior year, so are you done with college at this point?
I'm
or
officially graduated. I'm done. I'm searching for jobs right now. I'm almost there. But yeah, like wrestling to me is always going to be the first thing. College was really important. If anybody has the ability to go, highly recommend it. I think it made me grow as a person. I think that really prepared me for wrestling too. Everything in my life has, and I think wrestling in a way is going to prepare me for the real world too. There's a lot of things that people don't look at in wrestling. Like you think it's all the glitz and glamour. I don't know if they think that about the indies, but when you look at WWE and you know, major companies like AEW or New Japan, like it's still the same concept, just with a bigger production. And Dan really instills that in you and drills that into you of like showing up on time, making yourself available, being flexible, having to put in extra hours, not always getting a thank you. You know, eventually everything will pay off if you keep coming in and doing what you're supposed to. To me, it's not a race, it's a marathon, and it's based more on consistency than anything else. That's to me like the biggest thing that nobody notices in wrestling.
Yeah. One of the things Dan always says is, you know, the stuff in the ring is only so much. Like so many people get it confused and think like that's the big, but like that's such a small portion of what actually goes into pro wrestling, you know, on that, you know, and especially like WWE with the production and stuff like that, because that's the first thing people think of when you know they think of wrestling. The hours are insane.
Well, that's why, like, I look at somebody like Triple H and I go, yeah, he deserves everything he's ever gotten, because prior to him even being, you know, entangled with the boss's daughter, sitting in on meetings, going to all those things, doing meet and greets, you know, working with other people, trying to help out with matches, like, that's a perfect person that deserves everything, because he's doing every end and every job. Like, he's wearing every single hat.
Yeah. And I'm sure being Vince's son-in-law is not easy at all. So can't be easy.
I know, especially like what's going on right now. I'm sure that's got a big part happening with the family too.
Yeah, I can't imagine just how insane all that is. But
yeah.
So you get in, you get to the Monster Factory, you start training. When did you make your debut? When did you actually wrestle that first match?
So I'm coming up on the anniversary this year. It'll be my 1 year of having like I count my first match more so kind of the one that I had in front of people. My first match ever, I love him to death, is Michelle, Mike Dobbs, amazing guy, girl, however that works. If you know him, you know him. I had a pre-taped match with him, but I don't count. It's not the same experience, you know. It's not the same experience as going out there live. You can fall back on cameras cutting and having that fallback. But that first match I had, it was such a great moment. It was amazing. It's one of those moments that I look back on whenever there is like a trying time or a struggling time. There's a couple of moments I have that like I have captured by one of my friends who's this great photographer. I have these pictures on here, and it's the one of me just standing on that second rope looking out at the crowd in my my leather jacket at the time, because I thought I was such a badass. And just having the biggest grin on my face. And sometimes you go, yeah, that's what it's all about, is just making those moments for yourself. So that first match meant the absolute world to me. And it's been a steady uphill climb too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for a while there with World Renowned, like you guys were, you know, moving up and working.
Yeah, former tag team champions too. That was another, like, that's, I can say, is like the greatest moment of my life that I've experienced up to now. It's that and like graduating college. Those were like two of the greatest weeks of my life. Just that span.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you graduate for?
I graduated with a degree in marketing, so I was a marketing major and a film minor, just because I love film and I just wanted to have something fun on the side and torture myself with extra classes.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, that's cool though. You know, you say now film. So what type of films are you into? Like what gets you going in the film way?
I love
and not those movies you get off the internet.
Oh yeah, of course. Let me rethink my answer real quick then. No, I've always been really fascinated with like really disturbing movies. I'm such a horror nut. My favorite movie, by the way, is Clockwork Orange. I love it. It's my favorite movie of all time.
Great.
But like to me, my love for film is only an extension of like why I love wrestling and why I love comic books and why I love music. It's wrestling is all that kind of combined into one thing, and that's the one thing where I'm like, I just don't get why wrestling's not as mainstream as it should be, because it's got like this long ongoing like canon that's kind of like loosely like things get retconned, things get repackaged, yada yada yada, like comic books. They're like real life superheroes. There's an acting and performance element to it, almost like Broadway. There's like almost like improv, just being able to think on your feet and watching people interact with other people. There's that connection, like being at a rock show. Like I'm wearing a Journey shirt right now. Like I'm a huge music guy. You know, nothing's like live music, and wrestling takes that too. So I think like my love for film is only an extension of my love for wrestling, because it's a big part of that like bigger pie, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally get that, because as a horror movie guy myself, like my favorite film of all time is Halloween.
Love it.
And one of the things I've always thought of, like, you look at like Halloween and then the slasher films that came after it.
Yes.
There's so many parallels you can draw to wrestling.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Halloween was the old school, you know, you had characters you cared about.
Yeah.
It told a coherent story. And then you had like Friday the 13th comes along, which I almost say like Friday the 13th is like the ECW of horror movies, where it was like, yeah, you would get some characters here and there that you cared about.
Yeah.
But it just ramped up everything else. The sex, the violence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, eventually it gets directed by a porn director at some point. Halloween. What is that not Halloween, I'm sorry, Friday the 13th. It's like part 5 or 6.
One of them, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head.
It's like the most graphic one. It's if I'm thinking of it. It's the one where he like peels the girl's eyes out. I haven't seen all the Friday the 13th in a while, but I've seen all of them. Part 7's like a solid one.
Part 7's great.
Yeah.
A New Blood is so
my favorite. Part 4. That's peak for me. Like that's such a mixed bag. Like Jason Takes Manhattan's terrible. The first one's okay. It's the least Friday the 13th-y one out of the entire series, because it's got Pamela. And then they eventually like so deviate from it.
Yeah, I mean, because even myself growing up, I didn't realize Jason wasn't the killer in the first movie till I actually finally saw the first movie. The first one I saw was actually Jason Takes Manhattan.
Yeah.
Which actually I'm going to have to brush up on these and rewatch these soon, because I'm actually going to be talking to Gabriel Hodder for a Horror Movie Monday podcast. And we're going to cover the Friday the 13th series. But the 8th one was the first one I saw.
Yeah.
So I always assumed, like, it was Jason.
Yeah, and it's crazy too how it takes that turn, because it goes from being like very grounded, like even one of the movies, Jason isn't even the killer; it's Roy. Sorry to spoil.
Roy Burns, yeah.
It's Roy. So like
part 5, yeah.
Yes, it's part 5. I always get confused with that time. Like I'm so great with all these movies, but then with that for some reason. But yeah, it's weird with horror movies too how series progress, because. Like this is the biggest problem with the 80s. They either stick to the formula too much that like the movies just lose their magic as they go along, or they take such drastic like changes to it that it ruins it.
Yeah.
But Jason, like I don't mind him turning into a little bit of the zombie Jason thing. I don't like, because Jason
works. It works for Jason.
Yeah. Because it gets more supernatural as it goes along, and then it just kills it entirely when he turns into Jason Goes to Hell and he's like a demon worm.
Yeah, which was so goofy. The first time I saw that, where did I see that? First time I watched that was on BET. Of all places, yeah.
Yeah.
That was the first time I had ever seen that movie. And really, the only reason I even cared about watching it was because I wanted to get to the end because I knew Freddy's glove comes up and pulls the mask down. I'm like,
yeah. And then it took forever to even get that to come out because that was development hell. I still wish Evil Dead was somewhat tied to that because that's one of my favorite series. Funny enough, as I said that, I was watching Ash vs. Evil Dead before I started this.
Yeah, that would have been good. Like the Necronomicon's in part 9. Like basically, Jason's a Deadite.
Yeah, so that was how they were going to tie all of the stories together. Was trying to get Ash to like, I don't know, something with the spell, and then it all fell through, and it became what it. Look, I think that movie's perfect as it is. I don't really know what different you could have done. Like the story follows, like it kind of falls into that like 2000s-y look. Or kind of like they go for...
That's the biggest downfall of that movie is it was made in the early 2000s.
Yeah, it falls like victim to the remake craze at that point. Where everything just looks exactly the same. All the characters act exactly the same. They're so two-dimensional. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's like it's a solid movie. I recently rewatched it just because I was like, all right, I wonder if this still holds up because I hadn't seen it since I was a kid.
Yeah. I remember that was a big deal. Like I was so pumped for it, and
it's like the first big crossover. Like they had a cinematic universe prior to Marvel and DC and all these guys.
Yeah, really, especially in horror, that was the first time that had really been done since the old Universal days.
Yeah.
With those characters, and even those were more those crossovers. There were some, but for the most part, those all took place in the Abbott and Costello.
Yeah, meets Frankenstein, and then you see Wolfman.
Yeah, which are still to this day some of the greatest things.
Yeah, but that like it's crazy, and they tried to redo that too, but that didn't even work out. I saw The Mummy. It's just not good. It's very generic. There's nothing like offensive about it, but it's just a very generic movie where a mummy just happens to be added into the plot, and then at the end it's like, all right, let's try and tie everything together. Let's connect it to that Dracula Untold movie that came out.
Yeah, I have that on Blu-ray, Dracula Untold, somewhere, and I don't even think I've opened it yet.
I saw it when it came out, but I don't remember anything from it other than like a scene at the end where it's like, hey, we're putting together a team.
Yeah, I think I picked it up on Blu-ray solely because it was like $4.99 at like Rite Aid or some shit. So
bargain bin.
Dude, you would be surprised some of the gems you will find at a Rite Aid or a CVS.
I used to be that kid back in the day. I think that's like so how I got into horror movies. This interview took a completely different turn.
Yeah, I think we might have our first edition of Horror Movie Monday out of this one.
Yeah, right. But certainly, like, when I first came into horror movies, I was so young. I was way too young. And my cousins just let me watch whatever I wanted. And I remember I'm like, hey, Mom, can I get this DVD? And she just figured it was, like, either edited down or I just convinced her into getting it for me. I didn't even really know what it was. And it was Child's Play. Or no, it was Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky. It was that, like, pack with Chucky on the front with all the weapons on the side.
Yeah.
And like my earliest horror memories are watching Bride and Seed of Chucky. I still like I'm in the minority there. I like Seed of Chucky. I think it's a good movie. I think it's aged well too.
Yeah, I
Glenda thing.
I haven't seen the entire thing.
It's funny. Like it's just such a tonal change, and I think that's why people hate it. Like there's some weird things in there and some jokes that are kind of like dated, like killing Britney Spears, but like it's a good movie. I think it's solid. I think it falls right in line with what the franchise eventually turned into. I think, to me, in terms of horror movies, I think that's consistently the best franchise. 1's great. 2's
phenomenal.
Best. 3's okay, but it's not bad. There's still really good kills. It's the military school one. And then you got Bride, Seed, which I love. And the new trilogy, which was fantastic, and the show's great too. Like there isn't a bad piece of media that came out of them. Like people will always say it's Seed, but I disagree.
Yeah, I mean I've seen I think it was Curse of Chucky. I think I did watch that one, and I was kind of
it was the Netflix.
I was kind of. Is
that a trilogy? I knew there were 2. I've seen all of them.
So yeah, that's one actually. That's one series I'd like to see the Halloween retcon route on.
Oh, that's what it is. That's why there's another movie. So there was a remake with Mark Hamill that I never watched.
Yeah.
I heard it was like the concept's interesting because it's not a possessed soul, it's more of an AI, but I couldn't get into it.
I haven't watched that one. I do have the whole franchise, the Blu-ray set for the original, which has like Cult and Curse and all that.
Yeah.
But
also, Don Mancini directed and wrote all of those. Like, it's been the same guy, too, which is something you never see in horror, either.
Never.
I think that's why it's so cool. It's because it's had this consistent vision throughout.
Yeah, but it's one I'd like to see, like... I'd like to see them make another one that basically follows 3.
Yeah.
Bring those old characters back. Like, because I rewatched the first 3 not too long ago, and I'm just like... that there needs to be there needs to just be a Child's Play 4.
Do you watch the show?
I do not. I do not have cable.
So the show has like completely dove into that, and like towards the end of like Curse and Colt, Andy's back. Like that's why I think the show's so great. Like I was surprised that the show was so good. Some of the effects or whatever because it's a TV show, but like the show's great because you get So it starts off kind of like a basic like first 3 Child's Play movies, and it kind of just develops into like, all right, there's this larger universe because they've established a bunch of rules in the Netflix ones that like he can possess other people and split his soul and this and that. But like you get Tiffany coming back, you get old characters coming back because you got I can't remember her name. I'm usually good at this. And 2, his foster sister. Andy's foster sister.
Oh, I forget the name.
I know her name.
Who you're talking about. Yeah.
But yeah, eventually she comes into the mix now, and like you've got Brad Dourif's daughter, who's fantastic in the show. I think she was such a great like last edition character that they've done in the newer ones. But it's a great show, and now like apparently Glenn's coming back, and I can't be happier about that. Funny enough, like one of my Halloween costumes one year, I had my whole family go as the Chucky family because I was like, I love Seed, I want to be Glenn, so I made my Glenn costume. I got my mom to be Tiffany and my dad to be Chucky.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, that's a great franchise though. The first one I saw was 2.
Yeah. Which is great. 2's amazing.
Yeah, because I go back to the days of Encore, the channel.
Yeah, me too. That's how I saw a lot of these.
That's the first time I saw that. And I was young because, like, there was a point where, like, Encore was, like, a premium channel, but it wasn't, like, an arm and a leg to have. And, like, we had it on our regular...
Like an extension to your, like, bill. I remember having that. My parents had, like, HBO and all that, but... Yeah. I had that, and then the WWE 24/7 channel at the time.
Now, see, I go back even before that era. Like, we had one Encore channel.
Oh, okay.
But for whatever reason, like, it was the only like premium channel we had was the one. I'll never forget Channel 41. It was on for whatever reason, but it was all the full movies, uncensored, no commercials, none of the bullshit. And the great thing was having one of those VCR TV combos.
Yeah.
So I recorded that one and watched the fuck out of it. But that was the first time I saw that was on there. And I'm going back. I'm probably 8, 9 at this point. This is like the late 90s for me. And From Dusk Till Dawn.
That's a great one too.
Which I was way too young to be watching From Dusk Till Dawn.
That's how I was though with horror movies. My cousins, I would just buy, like you said, at the bargain bins, and like I just go over there and I'm like, "Hey, can I watch this with you?" And they're like, "We don't care. Like, we're cool."
Yeah.
And I was spoiled between that and wrestling. Like when I was super super young, probably like right when I got into wrestling. Like either 8 or 9, I fell in love with ECW.
Yeah, I still remember the first time I saw it.
Yeah, like how can you not too? It's such a different thing. It's like, oh my, here's polished wrestling, which is all like clean and looks good. Like even if you grew up in the Attitude Era, like there's still more of a polish to it than ECW. ECW has a level of grit that you just can't like match or recreate. It's just so organic.
And so many people have tried, but you totally can't.
Like I was curious because somebody on YouTube put up the whole CYN, like a CYN show, and I wanted to see what it was. Like, I've heard everything about it, and I'm like, all right, why don't I just sit down and watch it? And like they try and have this grittiness, and like, you know, they do their thing, and that's their stuff, but they'll never be able to be ECW.
No,
that's not a knock on them. It's just you can't.
Yeah. And I don't think they're trying as much as some other people in the past have, but
yeah.
Yeah, there was something because I watched some of the first show, and I don't know, it just wasn't it didn't do it for me. So
yeah,
personal taste, you know.
No, it definitely is. Like, I fell in love with Lucha Underground when I was in like very late into middle school, going into high school, and I thought
you make me feel old as fuck,
right,
man.
But like, also I should tell Ricky Reyes that, because it was our first season. Which is crazy. When I first met him, he had a Lucha Underground shirt, and I didn't recognize him because everybody kept calling him Ricky, and I only knew him as Cortez Castro.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you look so familiar. Did you work on Lucha Underground? He's like, he just looks at me with that look, like, yeah. Like, oh, my bad. How can I forget? Like, he took one of the craziest like bumps too from on Helico. When he jumped off the platform on the ladder.
I've only seen the first season and a couple episodes of the second. But that was one that took me some time to get into, because it is so...
It's so different.
So different. It's not a wrestling show. It's a show about wrestling.
Yeah. That is the best way to explain it. Somebody said it like that on a podcast I used to listen to. And it just... That was the best way to think about it. That's the best way to explain it to somebody too, who's kind of on the fence about it. Like, I know Cornette hated it, but you know, I agree with Cornette on a lot of things, but that I was like, no, this is so cool.
Well, I was okay with it because it didn't try to present itself as real.
No,
it tried to present itself as a drama.
Like, even how they did season finales, like Aerostar went into space, Matanza was killing people. Like, people got killed. People lost eyes on the show. Like, Rey Mysterio magically has an eye back now. With Big Zeke, he had to wear an eye patch for the rest of it, like the entire duration. It's hard for me to buy that with Rey, but I can buy that with Lucha Underground. You know?
Right? Yeah.
It's really, I miss it in a lot of ways, but also, you know, where I just don't know where. Like, it was even difficult to find at the time. It was on the El Rey network, so I was buying it on iTunes individually if I wasn't torrenting it, because it would take forever for it to get on iTunes. So I'd torrent it, and like, hopefully there were every episode. I was trying to watch it week to week. First season I got through all of them, but then like second and third season was getting harder and harder, so I had to like get it on iTunes. I was almost going to get El Rey just for the hell of it. Like, and it was expensive too.
Yeah, I remember I started watching it because actually my roommate at the time, who covered the cable bill, she had El Rey on her package.
Yeah.
So I was able to, that's the first time I really watched any of it. But then with it now being on Tubi and like free platforms and stuff like that, I got caught up and like watched the entire first season. But I thought there were great, again, like, I like wrestling like I like my horror movies. I want characters I give a fuck about.
Absolutely.
And I want good storytelling, and there was some great characters and there was some great storytelling in that.
No, and that's what gets you hooked on wrestling.
Yeah.
Like, there's an art form to it, and that's something that I really appreciate too. Like, I love watching great matches that are spectacles, but at the same time, I really thought The Fiend was awesome. I thought Matt Hardy was awesome when he finally got to that broken character. People I've always gravitated towards, even like wrestling wise, like my favorite wrestlers are Edge, Brian Pillman, and I mean like 96 and on Brian Pillman, who wasn't even really wrestling much because he was hurt. Like, I was infatuated with that character. And Raven's one of my all-time favorites.
Ravens,
yeah. And his matches are so basic. Like, it's just DDTs, drop toe holds, and like the clothesline in the corner and the bulldog.
Yeah, and maybe some hardcore stuff and 32 run-ins.
Yeah, like there's really not much to like Raven's moveset, but he's
No.
awesome. Like, and I thought he was the coolest thing in ECW. Like him and Dreamer have some of my favorite matches. I love to go back and watch all the time.
Yeah, they told a great story, and like that's a character too. It's so unique because it was such a product of its time.
Yeah, it wouldn't work now. It wouldn't because you can't do a grunge character now.
No, it was that was the epitome of the youth at the time.
Yeah.
The youth of the time was, I mean, and you can go back and look at so many examples. Woodstock '99 is a perfect example of just how
absolutely.
pissed off and angry the youth of America was.
That's a riot.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, certainly. And like it's funny to me too about Raven. Like he is the least grungy song of that time too, with the Offspring.
Yeah.
Like you would think Man in the Box. Like when I look at him, to me I either like in my head would hear Nirvana or Alice in Chains. To me like that song's the only thing that doesn't fit. Like that would fit Stevie because he's like jovial and like naive and like kind of like stupid, right? Like that's his own character. Is like he's this. Like he's just a sycophant for Raven.
Yeah, and it's funny because like when he left ECW and went to WCW, they basically ripped off Alice in Chains. Was it Alice in Chains or was it Pearl Jam?
No, that was Jericho.
Jericho was the Pearl Jam ripoff. That's right.
Didn't they do? No, they did come out. No, wait. No, they did come out and play for him. It was a Nirvana ripoff because they had Smells Like Teen Spirit for DDP, and then they had to come out and play. Or not come out and play. I'm sorry. Come As You Are.
Come As You Are. That's right. It was their Nirvana ripoff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jimmy Hart, man, the master of fucking ripping really shit off.
You know something? I'll give a little secret on here. My singles theme song that I used for the longest time is just Blondie. I had my buddy. Jimmy Harted it. Great dude. I worked for him at a sandwich place in Ocean City. I'll plug it right now. Sandwich Bar. Go there. It's awesome. But he is a great musician, and I'm like, hey, I need a theme song ASAP. Can you do this as fast as possible? He's like, how quick do you need it? I'm like, I need it by like tomorrow. He's like, all right. He's like, what do you want? I'm like, I really want to come out to Call Me by Blondie, but I can't because it's copyrighted. So he gave me the closest thing possible to it without it being copyrighted, and like I love my song because of it. And I don't want to change it. I want to add lyrics to it eventually, but I don't want to change it.
I didn't know until you just told me that it wasn't Blondie. I was always thinking, because like I know Dan's a stickler about copyright free music and all that because it's streaming on YouTube and whatnot.
Yeah, it'll take.
And I was always saying like, how the fuck is Christian getting away with using Blondie?
I think it's like an extra beat or something. I don't know how he did it, but it's different enough. Like that drum solo too in the beginning is like close to it too, like that. I
could have sworn it was Blondie.
Yeah, no, like even now, like I'm thinking about new songs because I'm venturing off now into the solo realm, and I'm like, wow, I really haven't done much solo stuff. I probably had like 2 or 3 solo matches before I ended up working with Nick, and then eventually Brian came into the mix, and we won the tag titles, and then we were world renowned, and then John was the big creative force in that. Like he had a vision. He let us do whatever we wanted to. Like that's not to say John limited us. John Alba is fantastic, and he's a great guy. I talk to him all the time. He's always been very supportive with character stuff, helping me out with promos.
Somebody I definitely would like to get on the show and chat with.
He's great. And like even the people he's worked with, like he's worked with people like Carmelo Hayes, who's now like one of the best things in NXT right now. Like he's one of my favorite things to watch in WWE. And the fun thing with Alba was he's like, all right, I've got my own music. And then he changed that even. He added lyrics to it. Brian Morris was able to come up with a good design for our T-shirt. And then like from there, we all kind of just added little things. Like we started doing the leader thing, like the leader-loser thing. And it was just this really awesome collaborative experience.
Yeah, and then they threw you out.
And then they threw me out, those pieces of shit.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Assholes. Like it was really fun working with them. It's so bittersweet now that I'm out of World Renowned. I don't know where I'm going. That's an absolute shoot. I promise you, I'm not working anybody. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, that is a total shoot because a lot of the times Dan won't tell you until
which is
you're
great
there, because he doesn't want people overthinking everything.
Yeah, that, and like I think you get people's genuine emotion. Like, it was such a bittersweet thing because like Nick and Brian were two of the closest people I've known there. So now, like, splitting them off, and also Desmond getting it. Like, I love Chris. Not anymore. I hate Chris. I don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah, fuck Chris.
Freudian slip. But it's so strange to kind of see, like, all right, we're going to let you go do your own thing, but we're sliding him in here, and they're going to still be there, but we're kind of just going to go down different paths and different roads. So, like, when you see me turn around and get drilled by Brian, that was my genuine reaction that afternoon, like probably an hour or two before when I found out, because I was just like, wow, all right, this is a lot to take in right now. And, I think it's going to lead to something much better. Definitely puts the focus on me now. It definitely puts the spotlight on me now. And it's now up to me to kind of take that ball and roll with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because you have a likable aura about you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
At least on camera.
Yeah, I'm on camera. I'm the biggest asshole.
Yeah. You ever meet this guy? But no, like, you have this likable aura about you. Like, breaking out of the heel group and going that route's going to definitely be good.
That was always the idea, I think, from the beginning too with Dan. Like, you saw elements of that. Like when he was pitching the whole thing to us and telling us what was going to happen, he's like, to me, I just see Christian as somebody who, like, he'll fall, like the idea of like Christian, right? This sounds so much more pretentious than it is. He saw something in me where it's like, I'm always willing to help out. I always stay out after. I always, like, there's like a genuine earnestness about me. And it feels weird saying that, like even talking about myself like that. But he's like, I just see your character as that too. Like somebody who's either like oblivious to cheat or is being coaxed into doing it, but is like, hey, what's going on here?
Right.
And
you're just too nice of a guy to...
Exactly. Yeah. That's the best way to put it. I'm overthinking it. But like, yeah, that's the way Dan saw it from the very beginning. And looking at it now, it all made sense. And even hearing the reaction of the crowd, I was like, I wonder how they're going to react, because you never know with fans. Like, yeah, we have a lot of the consistent fans, and they're great. I love them, but you don't know if they're watching all the shows, if they're always coming to everything. Funny enough.
And also, sometimes those crowds that are there, like you said, we have a lot of the same fans all the time. Yeah. Sometimes that makes it harder to get them.
Yeah. So, like... And my parents were in the front, like in the second row, and I just was thinking to myself, I'm like, and I don't tell them anything. They never knew when I was winning the titles. They never know, like, anything. So they just happened to come that day because I said I needed. I didn't know what was going on that day either. So there's no way they could find out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's another reason why Dan doesn't tell people, so they're not going and telling people, like.
Funny enough, I forgot. So, and it became a big part of the story too. I forgot my shirt that day, like my world renowned shirt. Like we only printed out 3, and this is some good story. Eventually, the third one will be found, probably end up in a museum. But in the 2300, I don't know what happened. Like something happened with gimmicks where one of the shirts got lost. I found one. And Brian found the other, but Nick never found his. And I'm like, hey, we need shirt. Like, I need the shirt. If you find it, come up, please. Like, if you can get a ticket, like, just stay. Like, whatever. And my mom comes up, and she's like, I'm just going to buy a ticket. Just come. I'm here anyway. So it turned out really hilarious that would be a big part of the story, is, like, when they nailed me and, like, were beating me down and I was unconscious, they peeled the shirt off me and, like, here he is. Here's Chris Desmond, the new member of World Renowned.
He's got the prestigious World Renowned shirt now.
Shirt that was like way too big for him because it looks so like it's so baggy on him. It's kind of funny because it's drenched in sweat, and also like him peeling it off, I guess, stretched it out too. But had my mom not brought that up, she wouldn't have been there, and like she was livid. I never said like, and she knows what wrestling is. Like and my dad both were really upset. I saw both of them walk out when it happened, and I was laying face down. It was funny how, like, that was one of those first times where I really felt the crowd. There's been times where I've wrestled and like big spots happen and you feel them, but like this was a time where you don't have to worry about what's next, or you're like, all right, I gotta stay on this person, or worry about character stuff or this or that. This was just, I know it's coming behind me. When it happens, and I don't really have to do much. I just have to react.
Yeah.
So it was so cool to just see everybody. It was like the Batista Orton. Like, it's not on that level. I'm not talking it up like that. But you know, when the crowd, or when the Seth Rollins peeled the chair back before he hit Roman, or when Triple H gave the thumbs down to Randy, like, I felt the crowd go, "Whoa, what? No!" And once it happened, I was unconscious. I'm laying there, and one of the kids from the kids camp was, I guess, invested in it enough that you could see it on camera too. He almost runs into the ring, and I feel somebody poking me, and I'm thinking, like, I went over it with a bunch of the refs. I'm like, hey, I want to be unconscious. I want you to pick me up and bring me back. I want this to look brutal. And I feel somebody poking my head. I'm like, why are they coming in that way? And he goes, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. And I see his dad pull him out, and he goes, I'm so sorry. I'm like, oh my God, that's the exact reaction we wanted.
Yeah, no, that just makes it even better.
Yeah, and it was that melted my heart too. It was so wholesome seeing somebody go, oh, I want him to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the nice things about having that crowd that we have too, though, is they do emotionally invest in the individual characters.
They do. They're great people. I love those everyone that comes to those shows. A lot of them follow me on Instagram. I follow them right back because I get just as invested in their lives as they do mine. Because they're so like welcoming, and they get invested in you from the very start. When I was security, people used to ask me what my name was and talk to me, and like that's something that's really wonderful to see. Like, people are just genuinely good people, you know, and they're rooting for you. So like, and that's everyone's debut match. By the time they see him, they're like, hey, that was the dude that was selling me hot dogs, or that was the guy who held the door for me, or was running me to my seat.
There's
like,
already a bit of attachment there.
Yeah, there's this personability that comes with working in it. It's our home. That's the thing. Like, you know, I've wrestled in a bunch of different places now. I've gone to different states. I just got back from Connecticut. I went up there with Bobby, and it's wonderful to come back home. It's like when I would go off to college. Like, yeah, it's nice being up here in college. I really enjoy it. I enjoy all my friends, but there's nothing like coming home and seeing your family. Like, this is the home turf. This is the base, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it has that vibe to it. A lot of those fans do live right in that general area and stuff, you know. So it's like their hometown a promotion, like territory almost.
Yeah, and I, like, you know, it's crazy too. Like, you eventually see people like Sloane Jacobs, who we knew as Mimi, who are now in NXT, and you're like, you know, I'm sure she's going to be a star, and she's going to be great with fans because she was always so personable and great with everybody who would come up to her and ask for a picture and would talk to her.
She was always great.
Like the time, like, you know, she's a star now. I'm sure she would give them the same exact time of day that she would then.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's the thing. Everybody is like that. Everybody's super personal with the fans on just a different level you don't get at other places.
I think that's why Preston Vance, like, I never got to meet him personally. Like, he's come by the factory while I've been there, and I've talked to him, but like, I didn't train with him. I didn't know what he was like before that. But like, you see what he does with Brody Lee Jr. and how he is with fans and kids. I just can only imagine that's probably coming from those birthday parties.
He's always been, and he was, dude, for the longest time, he was the birthday party king, man.
Yeah.
He was working those birthday parties constantly. He was always like that with the kids.
It's so much fun. It's like there's no pressure, and you get to work with kids.
It's so easy, man. They love everything. Like, the guys and girls who don't do the birthday parties are totally doing themselves a disservice.
They do. Like, man, I can't tell you how many kids, like, there's this one kid. He always comes to these shows with his dad, and I always see. I gave him a shirt that day. I'm like, oh, thank you. You know, it was his birthday, and he was thanking me and Fees, and he always comes up to us and he's asking us how we're doing, how we're, you know, like, he's so invested in us, and I'm just thinking like, wow, I would have never even met this kid if I didn't just show up on a Saturday morning.
Right.
Like, there's never an opportunity that I don't take, and I think going to those birthday parties is just so awesome. Like, it's just, number one, it helps you out with people skills, but also you get to meet great people. You get to have almost a day off where you just have no pressure. Kids will react to anything. We just want to see you have fun. And like, that's all you have to do is just go out there and have fun. You don't need to kill yourself. You don't need to go through tables or thumbtacks or fire to get a reaction. Like, they just want to see.
You don't have to run complicated high spots even.
No, and that's the fun thing. Like, I like just making those connections with kids and just talking to them from the ring and just giving them a look like, oh, I'm still in this. And they react. They love you. It's just something magical. And like, that's what motivates you even more to go to WWE, is just to be able to do that on a grander scale and to be doing it for more people like that. I know what it's like to be that kid. I'm still that kid. Right. I'm still that kid who goes to shows. Like, I still go to all these WWE shows that come by. Why not? Like, that's the one thing. Some people try and hide their fandom. I've never been embarrassed of it. You know, that's why we're doing it. And at the end of the day, we're all fans. That's why we're doing. Nobody's to the Monster Factory to get thrown against plywood and to, you know, get beat up every day if you didn't love it.
Right, you'd have to be either really either love it or you're really dumb.
There's no in it until there's money in it. No. You know, and that's not guaranteed either. Yeah, so you have to do it because you love it.
You have to. You totally have to, because it's physically, like we said earlier, physically dude, it beats the shit out of you. Dan said a million times, I've heard him say, you know, like, hey, if you want to do this as a hobby, that's great, but this is like a really shitty hobby.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, the time away from family, the damage you're going to do to your body. You know, there's things that have happened to me in a wrestling ring that, like, I'm going to feel the rest of my life.
Yeah, no, certainly. Like, to me, what scared me the most was when I got concussed, and I still had to finish up school, but there was a period I couldn't, like, even thankfully this was during the COVID, like, post-COVID era, because I could join via Zoom. I couldn't stare at a screen or go in a room that was bright. I was really messed up for a while, and I was getting, like, bad symptoms, and I'm like, you know, I really wouldn't have asked for it differently. This is what I signed up for. I can't complain. Yeah. Because there are moments like that where you get to see those kids wear your shirt, or to have those moments where the time stops when you see your good friend behind you is about to crush you.
Yeah.
Or when you win the tag titles. Like, it's moments like that make it all worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I started in 2008.
Yeah.
And I still remember the first time getting asked for an autograph.
Yeah.
You know, and it was insane. It's like, whoa. And, you know, that kid went on to become Jimmy Lloyd and is doing death matches now. It's like, wait, what? Like,
yeah.
It's crazy. I always, like, anytime I've ever seen him after that, like, I've brought it up. Like, I'm like, man, I remember, like, you being a little kid and, like, signing an autograph for you. And now you're, like, one of the biggest, like, deathmatch guys on the scene. Yeah, no, like,
that's crazy. Yeah. I had the vice versa of that with I don't know if you know Kevin Matthews.
Yeah. I know who he is.
TCRS, Russell Pro. He's been everywhere.
Yeah.
But like when I was working at the 2300, I was like, hey man, I don't know if you remember me or not, but I went to PWS like every single show that they had up until I was like 17 or 18. Like, I never missed one. It was right before it became WrestlePro. That's why I think I stopped going, because it got a little further, and I also went to college, which made it a farther drive. Yeah. And he just was like, "You kind of seem familiar," blah blah blah. And I pulled up a picture of me with him when I was like 10. He's like, "Holy shit! Yeah, I remember you all the time. You used to come to those shows all the time with your mom." I'm like, "Yep, that's me."
Yeah.
He's like,
"Your mom, the one Chris Dickinson fucked, right?"
Yeah, right. Jesus, like it's great. Like I can't wait one day that I can work with Chris Dickinson or maybe meet him in a professional setting, and I'm like, dude, I got the wildest story for you. Like,
Yeah, I say that to everybody.
yeah, I say it to everybody. But yeah, no, and he took a picture with me and he put it on his on his Instagram story, and I was like, oh wow, that's so crazy. I used to like think of him as like such a huge star, and at the end of the day, like now he's just another peer, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, dude, like, with the camps and stuff, like, and some of the people Dan's brought in, like, if 8-year-old me could see me sitting at a table having dinner with fucking Hugh Morris, like,
Yeah.
it would have blown my mind. Like, I've sat at Whistler's with Abyss there
Yeah,
and shit.
dude,
Like,
that's
it's
nuts.
crazy.
I had that moment like to like a couple of lesser extents. Like number one, like D'Lo Brown was backstage with us at the 2300. That was nuts. That him and Blue Meanie are standing right next to me and just sitting there watching the screen, and I'm like trying to go, like, oh my god. I still get blown away by that. Like I'll still get starstruck here and there. I can hide it very well, but
Yeah.
even just to the lesser extent of like people I train with actively. I remember going to the 2300 when I was in high school, going to see Shaheem Ali and LSG. And like
Right.
now like whenever I do something crazy after practice, they'll like DM me on Instagram and say like, what the fuck are you doing? What's this? Or just talking to LSG after our match and him just going like, yeah, you did great, man. Like I really liked working with you. Or even getting to know his brother MSG, who's also awesome. Like he's so cool.
Yeah.
He's phenomenal. The dude blows me away because he's so talented for such like little experience that he has.
Something in the water
Something in
those
the
boys were
St.
drinking.
Giovanni genes, right?
Yeah. I'm wondering if old man Giovanni was old territory
Was
journeyman or something, you know?
He probably wore a mask. They didn't even know.
Don't even know, yeah.
He's Mr. Wrestling 10 or something.
Yeah, one of the 27 of them. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just so crazy. It's such a surreal experience, and it only gets better as you kind of go on, because you're like, all right, you just adapt and you get further down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a wild ride, but it's a whole hell of a lot of fun at times too.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, for all of the, I don't want to say negative, but for all of the times that, you know, the stressful times and shit like that, they're so outweighed by the good moments.
Yeah. I was going to even say like 90% of the time it is stressful. But
Yeah,
for that
absolutely.
small 10%, it makes up for it and then some.
Absolutely, yeah. It can take a lot out of you. It can take a lot from you, but man, it's one of the most rewarding things at times too.
Sure. There's nothing like it. And like even now, like I'm applying to jobs, and I'm absolutely going to take them. Like there's not much money in wrestling. Sorry to blow that secret to you. If you see a lot of independent wrestlers, most likely that is not their only source of income. I might be world renowned, but that doesn't pay every paycheck.
Yeah.
You'll never, you can get paid a crazy amount of money for doing just such a mundane and regular job. And like, sure, there's perks to it. You get insurance and everything that can pay for wrestling and get you gear in that. But like, there is never going to be a point in working behind a desk that you get in wrestling. No, nothing will ever match it. So like, why not do it?
Right. Absolutely. If you don't become wealthy financially, you're going to be wealthy. You're going to have a wealth of memories and just great things you can look back on and go, man, I'm really fucking
Would you
glad
rather
I did
tell
that.
your grandchildren that you sat there behind a cubicle and just did papers and maybe went to a conference in like Tulsa or Duluth? Not to shit on those cities, but like, instead of saying like, hey, I worked at the Monster Factory, like even if it's in Paulsboro, like I worked in front of a crazy crowd that night that were going crazy after I did a moonsault off the top rope.
Yeah, just
Like
whatever
I feel like
it is,
Grandpa
man.
is
Like,
pretty fucking cool.
yeah, it's definitely way cooler than, a normal 9 to 5.
Yeah.
There's not many other jobs out there like it.
No, and not many jobs where you'll get almost an instant feedback from people too.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that's another great thing too. Just really being a part of the like that's something that I've tried to work on a lot, because sometimes I get so invested in like, all right, everything needs to be perfect, and you don't take that moment to just like sit there and just absorb like, holy shit, I'm doing this in front of like 100 people right now that are invested with me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the energy, the emotion, everything. It just molds together into just one big, great ball of just this amazing thing.
Yeah, no, and like going into the 2300 arena was the closest thing. Like Brian and me kept making this joke. It's like, yeah, I could get used to that. It's just coming out to a stage in front of what was it, like 2,500 people, or like it's nuts. Like you're sitting there, got the smoke and pyro and like a Titantron behind you. You're walking out and everyone's booing and like getting rowdy. Like I could get used to that. That's something I can get addicted to. I see how this is addictive.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that was another thing I wanted to ask you about, because you had gone to some shows in that building prior to being a wrestler, and like
every single month ever since I started going there.
How incredible was that to actually? Because I remember my first time I ever walked into that building, not as a fan, like, was pre 2300 Arena days.
Yeah.
I trained at another promotion that was running there for like a
one night.
Yeah.
That's when I think I started going, was right around like 2012.
Yeah, and just walking in there and walking around the parts of that building you don't see.
Yeah.
It was mind-blowing to me. It was like, whoa, holy shit. And it was a shithole when I was there.
Yeah, no, like they've changed that place, right? It's been so renovated.
It's so much different.
How I felt about it? Just another day at the office, you know. That was just another. I'm kidding. It was fucking incredible. It was amazing. Nobody had a connection to that place like me, because nobody really went there as a fan as much as me. Or I think nobody knows the level of wrestling history that I do, and I don't think anybody would argue that at the Monster Factory. Like, they all collectively agree I'm like the encyclopedia of wrestling, and that's how I was when I was a kid. Like, like it sunk in when Dan announced it, and we kind of had to keep quiet about it. Again, something I really wasn't telling my parents about until like the last minute, and then they were like, "Oh my god!" But yeah, just when I was driving up there, because I had a longer drive. I wasn't in Philly that night. I kind of lived between Philly and South Jersey, and I was staying in South Jersey. Driving up there in that hour ride, about like a half hour in, I still remember it just kind of hit me like, holy shit, you know, I went through hell and high water to get here for 2 years.
Yeah.
And this just felt like all of that coming to fruition, like the fruits of your labor. Like I'm getting choked up thinking about it now, but that really hit me. And then once we got there, it was like, I didn't expect the level of production to be there, you know, because like, again, we're not a huge company. We're great, and we make a great product, and we put out, I think probably, I don't think we're crazy to say we put out like one of the best, if not the best, like wrestling schools product, like a product of wrestling schools, and with students who don't know what that, like, we all just learn it when we get there, all the production, and we slowly add to it. But like walking in there and seeing like a Tron, seeing the stage, seeing like the MFPW logo all over the place, just going like, wow, this looks like TV wrestling. This looks like the big leagues. We felt like
and to be fair, that is a building that many of the bigger, I guess, indies, or even, you know, MLW, Impact, you know, that's one of the main buildings both those companies use these days.
And the last show I went there to as a fan because like wrestling gets demanding and you can't be there every weekend because you're working yourself. The last show I went there was the Evolve show right before COVID, which was run by WWE, and I still remember their trucks being outside.
Yeah. Oh, that's the one that ended up that they aired live on the network. Yeah.
Paul Heyman showed up. Austin Theory beat JD Drake. Adam Cole was there. Like a lot of Matt Riddle was there. It was the return for a lot of these guys, and like that was another crazy thing too. People I never thought I'd see there again, because for me, I saw every like major event in Adam Cole's career happen in that building. Whether it was him, like I saw him leave Ring of Honor there. That was his last show there. His mom was in the front row. I still remember that. And just being a part of that history. Like I'm a huge wrestling historian. Like that's crazy that no matter what, like even if the match was bad, which it wasn't, like we had a great time. We had fun. We got to work with people we enjoy working with. Just like whatever happened, if I walked out to the ring and had a heart attack, at least the bell rang,
right,
and my name is written right next to everyone who has ever performed there. Like I performed in the same building that, like I said, people I love, like Brian Pillman performed there. Adam Cole, Raven, Tommy Dreamer, a bunch of stars from TNA, Ring of Honor. Like I saw Nakamura and Okada come over there. That was like their first like American tour was over there with Ring of Honor.
Yeah. I remember, God, even going back further than that, I was at the New Japan show they did there, the first time New Japan did a tour. Yeah. It was like a 3-day, like...
I was there for 2 of the days. It was... there
was like a show in Rahway, then they came to Philly, and then I think they were in New York the next day.
So I think I remember this one. I think it was in 2014. I remember this because it was my... I have a weird memory when it comes to things. I remember it was my last week of school because my school got out early. So it was in like middle or end of May. And they did 2 back-to-back shows at the 2300. Like,
yeah, I think we're thinking of different tours, but
yeah,
go ahead.
But they did like a Wednesday and a Thursday. And then Friday NXT was at Tower Theater not too far away. And then there was another show, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to."
I think NXT ended up adding a second show to Tower Theater because I remember going to the. I was at the second night with my cousin. Actually,
I went to both. I have that poster still in my room because they used to make the posters. I think it was Joe and Balor or Joe and Nakamura. It was one of the two.
It was Joe and Balor.
Because he came out as the Demon the second night.
Yeah, he came out from like one of the little like side areas. It was super cool. Yeah. I had a ridiculous mohawk at the time, and I remember like Enzo Amore like going to the bus. He's like, "Hey, nice hair, man."
That's so nuts. Like again, we crossed paths. Didn't even know it. That's so cool too. Like I love the Tower Theater for music history. Like I'm a huge David Bowie guy. He recorded his greatest live album there, and like maybe one day I can be a part of that history too. It's just nuts. Like that's such a crazy thing about wrestling. I talk like to me, it's getting into this fan mode right now, right? Where I'm talking about how surreal everything is, but that's what it is. I mean, that's why you do it.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'm going to wrap things up. We've been here for a minute, and it's been a blast, but I think that's definitely a good way to end things and kind of it puts everything into perspective as to the why.
Yeah.
For sure. Because like we said, even at times being involved in it, you ask yourself why. There you have it. Christian, where can everybody find you on social media?
Yeah, sure. Please hit me up on social media. I'm Christian Rocco 41 on Instagram. That's primarily where I stay, but I also have a Twitter. It's Christian Rock 14. That's ROCC. And you can find me on Facebook as well. Just search up Christian Rocco. I'll be right there. I'm open for bookings. You can get me at my Gmail. That's roccojames41@gmail.com. And I'll give you my LinkedIn if you want to give me a job. I'll cover every ground. But it was a blast coming on here, man. We got to talk horror movies at some point. I got a podcast myself that I'm trying to revive where we talk about horror movies. I'll definitely have you on.
Dude, we have definitely got to do one of the Horror Movie Mondays. which is something that'll be launched here on the Corvo Riot Show very soon. Every Monday, we're going to have... sometimes it's just going to be me talking about some random goofy horror movie, because I've seen some obscure shit.
Those are the best, though. I love random goofy ones.
Yeah, totally. So, but yeah, totally going to have guests on as well, because why not? Horror movies are amazing. They're great. We definitely got to come back and do. We almost turned. This almost became a horror movie.
I was like, oh my god, this isn't wrestling at all.
Yeah, I'm gonna be hitting you up like within the next day to schedule the next one, because for sure. Totally got to do a horror movie Monday. Christian, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Dude, thank you for having me. This was a blast. I'm honored that you asked me to even come on here. So thank you so much. Listen to Corvo Riot Radio, man.
Let's go. Come on. This forever. No surrender. Yeah. You know that this right here forever. And there will be no surrender. Now allow me to reintroduce myself. They call me J-O-N to the easy E-N. Know that we undefeated. Y'all are beneath them speeches trying to air a grievance, but his lines are overhead. Better check the air for clearance. Call the tower. This is ours. Clear the heat. The air apparent. Really, I've never been better. Legacy, this is forever. All the more times I've been severed. I'm raising the bar. You can go ahead and measure. Think about time for a toast. Time that we welcome to go.